V'hinei. L'kiyum mitzvah she'yaf shalas ad yachedim. The halacha is that when you're doing a mitzvah that nobody else can do on your behalf, mevatlan talmud Torah, you interrupt learning Torah. V'afilu ma'aseh mekava, even learning in Yonim of Said about the mekava al yena. V'kol shekein tefillah, and certainly davening. Shahid, that davening is b'chinas meicha, b'chinas sichliim, is the idea of the brain and the yid and av, which comes from the seichel, right? That we discussed before, that meicha, the b'chinas sichliim, is the madreg of hegevurim and hegevaros and hechasadim, which you mentioned in the first point. So why? Why would you mevatel talmud Torah and tefillah, which is mamshech yichudim from higher than atzilus into atzilus, and tefillah to be doing mitzvahs, v'atam kanal, and the answer is because of birurim. Because of birurim, because you're fixing the gashmias in bia, and this is the ikar hatachlis, is do mitzvahs ma'asiyas begashmias. So he's saying to you, the first point does not involve birurim, but that you can do beruchnias through tefillah, through Torah. The second point involves gashmias, they can mitzvahs, gashmias, they can birurim, and this is the tachlis. So far we spoke two inyanim and mitzvahs. The first is yichudim, which is giloyim. The second inyan is mitzvahs, which is birurim. And now we're going to speak, I suppose you could call the following atzmus. The idea that in mitzvahs you have atzmus of Hossein Baruch Hu. This nekuda that we're about to learn, I would say dominates this against the Kaddish. It's the next page and a half. And then it repeats itself again. And the ikid is the end of the Iger is a Kaddish. Is a shturim wegen dem b'nigeh tzotera. And that is that the mile of mitzvahs is that when you do a mitzvah bagashmias, you're mamshich the atmos of atzilus down here, the atmos of alakus, no tzimtzum, no miyot, no not. Normally when you have ruchnias, you bring ruchnias from a higher level to a lower level, it changes. It becomes more magushim, it goes on to a lower level to be able to accommodate a new reality, right? Everybody understands that, right? Here we have, for example, a person learns Torah, teaches it to a student, the student's going to have less of Torah than the teacher had. But when your teacher teaches a student how to do a mitzvah, and the student does that mitzvah, it's exactly the same mitzvah. There's zero shinui, right? It remains exactly the same. So the Alter Rebbe is going to argue this is a third inyan in mitzvahs, a mile in mitzvahs. That when you do a mitzvah bagashmias, the atmos of atzilus is in asiyah, or to say it even on a higher level, the atmos of alakus is in asiyah. You'll see soon. The reason this is true is specifically because mitzvahs are connected to kelim. Because the difference between kelim and oid is ha'ara, is gilui. And the nature, you talk about ruchnias, it goes from a high level to a low level, it changes. I'm not sure if you say the same thing about Torah, Seichel HaTorah, but it's true. The Matthias is, Seichel HaTorah, you're learning an idea in Torah. It goes from a high level to a low level, it's compromised. The Rebbe is going to argue this against the Kaddish, that there is one part of Torah where it remains exactly the same from the highest level and the lowest level. And that's when you're learning the Seichel HaTorah connected to Halacha, which is Lamaiseh. Even if you're learning Halacha, but you're learning by Hilchas Leishchiche, it would not apply. So the Alter Rebbe is making a distinction in Torah between one part of Torah which he compares to mitzvahs and a different part of Torah which he doesn't compare to mitzvahs. The Hebrew word is, if you're talking about Giloyim, talking about Oyer, when Oyer goes from a higher level to a lower level, it changes. Talk about mitzvahs is called atzmus. From the highest level to the lowest level, it doesn't change at all. Mitzvahs have the mile of atzmus because they're connected to kelim and not to Oyer. Kelim are atzmus. Atzmus, when it comes from one place to another place, remains exactly the same. So now let's read. There's a third inyan in the Yisrein of mitzvahs, and that is Sheba Emet. The truth is, Ma'oid, very much, Godla v'Gavha, is greater and uplifted. Mailes ha-mitzvahs maisias, the level, the advantage of practical mitzvahs. V'chein limudam, including also the limud. These two words, v'chein limudam, is a ganze kled. The last 3 pages of the Gersa Kaddish are going to try and explain these two words, v'chein limudam. That in limud halachas of Torah, since it's halacha l'maised, is also atzmus, which is above Mailas HaMeichin, over the idea of Moichin. Moichin means to understand the Eibishter, because when a person understands the Eibishter, shein dechilu or dechimus sichliyim, which is yid and avaret to seichel. In other words, there's a difference between doing a mitzvah and loving the Eibishter. Included in doing a mitzvah, he's including the halachas, the halachas of Torah that are connected to a mitzvah. What about if I'm learning Torah? It's not connected to halach. Where does it go? I'm going to propose to you that it goes in the same category as the Chilur Rechim U'Sichlim, but I can't say it for sure because Alter Rebbe doesn't say it. Okay, we have two beginnas. The light, when the light goes from a high level to a low level, it changes. This is Yirah V'Ahava. And Halacha, I'm going to say Teda, which is not Halacha L'Maisa. And then the Yetzim, which is connected to Kalim. And that's mitzvahs. And learning halachas of Teda, and you'll see later on, this includes also learning the Soid, the Kabbalah of Halacha L'Maisa. Kiagam, the Ksiv, although it's written, Odaf Kabei, Ayadei Mideisav, a person is supposed to attach to the Eibishter. And the way you attach to the Eibishter is Had B'Mei Mideisav, you do what the Eibishter does, Mahu Chanun, Mahu Rachum, and so forth and so on. And included in that, the Alter Rebbe apparently holds. This means you have to love the Eibishter and fear the Eibishter. Nevertheless, when you're loving the Eibishter and using this as a midah of connecting to the midas of the Eibishter, Einenu David, you're not attached to emes. Afilu b'midas al yenis, even in the midas of Atzilus, let alone the moichan of Atzilus. And higher ela b'mitziyusan v'lei b'vuhusan. You're connected only to the form of the midas of Atzilus and not to the substance, to the mahu of the midas of Atzilus. It says in Yigaz Akedah Simon Tezvav, I am earth and ash. And Yigaz Akedah Tezvav, Alter Rebbe is Abed in the Kabart. Avraham Avinu calls himself Afer and Ephes. Alter Rebbe, what does it mean? Avraham Avinu was in the Neshama of Atzilus. And because of the Neshama of Atzilus, down here in this world, there was a Gili of Chassid of Atzilus in his guf. It says in Sefer Abayir, Amar mitzvah chesed lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the meyem she'amad Avraham Avinu, I have no job, because who? Chesed of Atzilus told the Eibishter, I'm out of a job. Avraham is doing my job. It's like Gilib Chesed and Atzilus and Asiyah. Zog the Alter Rebbe v'neichav aveifer. The difference between the Chesed of Atzilus in Atzilus and the Chesed of Atzilus of Avraham Avinu is the difference between a piece of wood and the ash that's left over after you burn the piece of wood into ash. It's Shalei Berech. So even when there's a Gilib Atzilus in Biyah, it's called Mitzuyusan v'lei Mehusan. The power of that chesed exists, but not the richness and the enlightenment of that chesed. So when a Yid does a connection to Hashem, of Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem, although he's doing Mekayim a mitzvah of Uladaf Kabeh, which is a very important Indian, right? Although he's doing Mekayim a mitzvah of Uladaf Kabeh, but it's connected only to the Mitzias and not to the Mahus. The Koshkin, and certainly Be'erein Tzav Baruch Hu, the Pnimius of the Mitzvahs, which is the Gatlei light which is in them, the Leis Machshava Tfisa Bey, nobody can hold, no thought, no kli can hold the Erein Tzav Be'erei in the light of the Eibishter, the Espashas L'chayis Mani Yisbarach, and the expansion of life that comes from the Eibishter. In other words, when you're connected to the Eibishter through His bonus and Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem, you're connected to the Eibishter, but the connection that you're having is not to the Eibishter but to godliness, and not to the Mahus of godliness but to the Metzias of godliness. Okay? Kiyim only b'mitziyusa, which is the form or the reality, the guf of this Ein Tov. Shehu shemachaya is kulam, which gives chayas to everything. V'lei b'mehusa, you cannot connect to the substance of the Ein Tov. Afilu al yedi. This truth that you cannot experience the mahus, the substance of Atzilus, is not only true of us, it's true also of the Ruchnizik creations, like Malachim, as the Pasuk says, that even Malachim that are called Srafim, that are Ne'el Mabriya, they say Kodesh, 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 Ad Hashem Tzavois V'Gemer. Malachim of El Mabriya said the Eibush is removed. So what we see from this is, it is a touch in Arech, between Atzilus and the lower worlds, even Malachim Mabriya say Kodesh, 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 and for sure us. So if you're attempting to connect to the Eibishter through Limud and his bonus and Ava V'Yira, you can't connect to the Eibishter's light and Atzilus, but it's only the Metzias, not the Mahus. It's very, very diluted. This is called Giluyim, and this is only a Ha'ara. And again, he doesn't mention Teda, which is not a Liba de Hilchasa, but I would say that it's the same thing. You're learning Teda. That's the Eid of Ein Tov. But the tfisa that you have is in the Eid of Ein Tov that's been brought down to the level of Seichel, and a Seichel Gashmi. The godliness has been compromised. You have the Metzias of the godliness, not the Mahus. The idea that you have the Atmos of Yiddishkeit is only in a mitzvah, and a halacha, which is a liba de hilchas halacha l'maisa b'fil mamash. Levad, the one exception is alulim hanetzalim. Those effects which are emanations, in other words, those creations that exist in Atzilus. So masigim kol echad be'ilasa, each one is able to have an intellectual reach in the mahus of its cause. In other words, if you are a nivra of Atzilus, you know your direct elokus source in Atzilus in its mahus. As the order of connection between Ila and Ol is described in the It's Chaim about the slapches of Patzuf. So he says, there are Taki and Atzilus Ne'etzolim who know the Mahus of their source, but that's very, very exceptional. No creation can know the Mahus of Alakus through his abundance and Avat Hashem and Yiras Hashem, not us and not Malachim. And he says over here, Afilu b'neshamas Atzilus, even neshamas of Atzilus. Because the Yotzav Nifredu, like the Alter Rebbe says in the Ged, the Kedesh Simon Chaf, Moshe Kosev, Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Hashalom, like it says, Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Hashalom, but he says, the Chaydev Gamer, and Moshe Rabbeinu can only see the back of Alakus, which the Alter Rebbe translates here, Vos Meit Acherayim, Ha'ora and Aretzim. So basically what today's Shir is saying, that you're trying to connect to godliness through the avenue of Giluyim, his bonus, Avat Hashem, and Yiras Hashem, you should know, only the Netolim Al Yenim could do it. Nivraim of Atzilus cannot do it, and for sure Nivraim of Bria like Malachim, and for sure we, even though we can have a connection to Alakus, but it's only the Metzias, it's not the Mahus, it's only a Ha'ara. And the next Shir is going to speak about Atzmus, and Atzmus is available Dafki and Mitzvahs Maisias, because Mitzvahs Maisias are connected to Kalim, and therefore the Nimshach Lamata without any Shini whatsoever. When you're doing a Gashmi Mitzvah, Atzilus is an Asiyah, that's it. The Atzmus of the Lakus of Atzilus is an Asiyah.
You still can never go up to reach
I don't hear you.
You still can never go up to reach Atzilus.
Right. So we have 3 milas. Yesterday we had 2, Yichudim and Berurim, and now today we have the idea that you're Mamshach Atzmus Lamata. Which of these 3 is the highest? Which of these 3 is the lowest? Which of these 3 is in the middle? That's homework.